67% of you want to talk about the pick tool, the text tool. Nobody wants to talk about granite fills or knockout. What I figured out is that there are 50 Tuesdays and Fridays till the end of the year. I'm going to try to keep a portion of this pretty organized so that I can cover something different every week. But then I think what I'll also do is have questions and answer time so that if you have a question, I'll be able to answer your questions while we're on here. And then we'll just go from there. So because of the format, I mean, if you want to interrupt me, that's perfectly fine. If you want to raise your hand or something so that I can see it so that you're not talking over, that's perfectly fine too. Tammy, I think there is a raise hand option somewhere. You can also chat if you want to do the chat. I can see it there. So those are all ways that you can communicate. But the first thing that I wanted to do was talk about the pick tool. So I'm going to share my screen. And I'm going to share the screen here. All right. Okay, so let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes.
Can.
Yep. Okay. So the pick tool is this one up here in the left-hand corner. Very top one. This area of tools is called the toolbox. Just like if you were a carpenter or something and had a bunch of tools in your toolbox, that's what this toolbar is called. So if I refer to the toolbox, I'm talking about this toolbar over here. The pick tool is the very top one. And if you look at the bottom right of some of these tools, there's what's called a flyout. So when you click on that, there are other options for the pick tool. The other one is called the freehand pick, and we'll get to that later. And then there's free transform, which I never ever use. So I mean, I don't want to waste my time talking about that one. But the pick tool is meant for picking things up, moving them around, rotating, resizing, that sort of stuff. So if I draw a rectangle with my pick tool, I click on the edge of it if it isn't filled. If I apply a fill, then I can click anywhere inside that object and it's going to select it. If it's not selected, if I click anywhere inside this object, it's going to select that object. And then it gives you what are called handles on all of the corners. And then it also gives you a little X in the center. Okay. So the first thing to know with the pick tool is that clicking and dragging moves things around. Double clicking switches to a different set of handles, which are the rotation and skew handles. And if you're in the double click mode, then clicking again will get you back into the regular mode. So, and you don't really have to double click, it's just you click once and then you click on it again. So it toggles between the two as you click, like that. So if you want to rotate things, you just click on that handle and drag it. Up here is going to show you your angle of rotation. And then, so as you rotate, you can see that angle. You can also do what's called constraining. So constraining is where you hold control on the keyboard. And as you rotate, then it's going to constrain it to certain degrees. And by default, I have it set for 15-degree increments. So as I rotate, it's going to go 15 degrees.
Cameron?
Yep.
This is exactly what I need.
Good. Memorial Designer for beginners. Another thing with the pick tool is how you can select things. Okay. So I'm going to bring in a design that's got a whole bunch of different stuff on it. I'm just going to hit O on the keyboard, type in 347 to open by number. And hopefully it'll go find 347. So if we look at this design, it has a whole bunch of different objects. If I want to select the stone shape all by itself, it's pretty easy because there's a lot of blank area here that I can click on, right? So if I click, I can select that all by itself. If I want to click on the panel behind Howard, I just have to find somewhere that's blank and not really getting touched by anything else. If I clicked anywhere up here, I'm going to run the risk of accidentally clicking on these. So I usually just look for blank areas to click on. But no, depending on what you have, sometimes what you want to select is actually maybe part of something else, or there are multiple pieces that make up what you want to select. So for instance, this panel, if we move this around, we've actually got two different pieces. We got the frosted part, we've got the outline part, okay? So if I want to grab both of those things, there are multiple ways of grabbing multiple things. One of which is to grab out here in the white, drag a line or a marquee box, and then let go. And anything that's inside that box will get selected, which in this case selects the text as well, which is okay if we want to select the text, but if we don't, then that's maybe not the best way of going about it, right? So another way is if we zoom in, and I'm just using my mouse wheel to zoom in, if I click on one object and hold shift while I click on another object, then what that does is it adds to the selection by clicking on multiple things. It can also remove from the selection if you have it already selected. So if I didn't mean to click on that, still holding shift, if I click on it again, it's going to remove that from the selection. Does that make sense?
Yes. So if we had put the marquee around the whole panel and Howard,
Yep.
if I wanted to deselect Howard, I would just hold shift down and click on Howard, right?
Just like that.
Okay.
Oh,
Got it. And I do that quite often because a lot of times there's a lot of stuff that I want to grab, but maybe not one thing in there that I don't want. So I can grab as much stuff as I want and then deselect what I don't want. Okay.
Love it.
I don't want to derail this, but I don't like the space between the W and the A.
I don't either. This is an older font. So this is my old MM-SKS font. And if you use these MM fonts, just know that the kerning was not good back when we built those in the mid 90s. And so I've replaced them with MD Roman. I just haven't replaced them yet in the templates.
Okay, so you wouldn't fix the kerning, you would just change the font.
Yeah, so the thing with kerning is you can do it manually, right? But if you do it manually, you have to do it every time manually. So I'd much rather have a better font than manually kern stuff. And my MD Roman font, this is my version of modified Roman. And I've tried to do the best on kerning, you know, for what looks good to me, but everybody's different and they're all going to look at things a little different too. The other thing is the MLC fonts. If you get those, these are all done way better than any font that I've ever made. So I like to sell them as much as I can. And I think their kerning is great too. So you shouldn't have to manually kern things unless you're picky and don't like it a certain way. But even if you're picky and don't like it a certain way, I'd still suggest you just modifying the font file as opposed to manually kerning, because manually kerning is going to take, you know, you do it once and you have to do it every time. If you're manually doing things, if you're fixing the font file, you only have to do it once, if that makes sense.
Okay, sorry to take us off course.
No, that's perfectly fine.
Back to pick tool.
Okay, so back to pick tool. So some more things with the pick tool is that if you if whatever you're trying to grab around does not really work well with a rectangular marquee, okay, and I don't know that I've got a really good example in this particular file, but that's what the freehand pick is meant for. If you ever run into needing to grab around something,
Yes.
it acts like a lasso. So you just draw around what you want, and anything inside what you draw then gets picked.
That's awesome.
Okay. It's got to be completely inside that blue marquee that you do. So if I go like this and I say I want to pick up Howard and Kathy and July and that sort of stuff, if you look down, I missed, I think, right there at the bottom left of the H. So if I let go, it's not going to grab Howard because I just barely missed it right there. Okay.
Okay.
So I want to make sure I grab Howard. I'll go a little bit bigger, come out like this, like that, and that'll grab it.
Oh, that's how you make sure you don't pick up the pine cones and stuff because they're not completely enclosed.
Right, exactly. And most of the time I can
Love
do
it.
that with a rectangle, because if I start out here, I can come like this all the way down. And the only thing that so this isn't going to grab the pine cones because they're not completely inside that box. What it will grab is the Howard panel, everything in that panel, and it'll grab Kathy's text, but it's not going to grab Ethan's text. It's not going to grab any of the other panels. So when I let go, it's grabbing this because that's the stuff that's completely inside that square.
That makes such good sense to me.
Okay. And so often, if I want to grab something specific, I'm going to look at where can I draw a box, where can I start to draw a box that's going to let me grab that without grabbing anything else. And it's all based on, is there something that's going to be inside that box? The one that most people get tripped up on is, let's say that we had some rings. I'm going to go find some rings here. Let's see. Sandblast. I'm going to go rings. And let's find some rings. Okay, so let's say we had some rings here. And they are maybe like that. But we're zoomed in to the point that we can't click anywhere that is a white area, right? Because if we start up here and click, it's going to move that panel because it's filled in. If we start down here and click, we can't do it either because it's filled in. So one of the tricks is that if you go to Wireframe, Wireframe doesn't have any fills. So if you hit V on the keyboard to go to Wireframe, then you can select and drag from anywhere. Because there are no fills, it's not going to pick up anything that you don't want to pick up. Okay, so you can click like this and whatever. So that's one trick for being able to select things that, when you
In the middle.
Yeah, in the middle when you've got things that are all filled up. That's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is holding the Alt button. If you hold the Alt button while you click, you can actually, it acts as if it's in Wireframe. You're not going to select anything. Okay?
Wow.
But you have to let go of Alt before you let go of your mouse button. So you're holding Alt, dragging around, you let go of Alt, and then you let go of your mouse button, and that'll select those things as well.
Loved it.
The last thing is, so we talked about adding things to your selection with Shift. You can also grab multiple things by holding Alt on your keyboard while you drag it. Just like I showed you here, holding Alt. The way that Alt works when you let go of your mouse button first, as opposed to when you let go of the Alt button first, is it selects anything that touches either touches that blue box or is inside that blue box. So this is actually going to select everything that it's touching because I'm holding Alt while doing that. Okay. And so oftentimes, and this comes into play a lot of times when I grab this and I go to my plot page, if I wanted to select this piece of the panel and this piece of the panel, it's easier for me, especially if I'm zoomed out, it's easier for me to grab these pieces of the panel by holding Alt, dragging around, letting go of my mouse before I let go of Alt, and that grabs anything that touches that blue.
Okay.
Okay. And that way I can grab multiple things super easy without having to be very accurate. If I wanted to be accurate, I'd have to zoom in, click on one, Shift, click on the other, and that takes a little bit longer for me.
So this has to be done in Wireframe?
It doesn't have to be done in Wireframe. However, if you're not in Wireframe, if we're back this way and we hold Alt, it's also going to grab the stone shape because it's touching the polish. If that blue mark is touching any of that filled in area, it's going to grab it. So that grabbed both the panel and the shape.
Okay, so you just went up and picked plot and it opened up a separate tab at the bottom.
yeah, the plot page will create a second page down here, and it gets rid of all my fills for me.
So essentially, it opened it up in Wireframe.
Technically, no. So wireframe, what wireframe is wireframe is a view. Okay, it doesn't change your objects at all. It's just changing how you view them. So it's like looking at a body, and you're looking at a body regularly, and then you're looking at an X-ray. You're not changing the body, you're just looking at the way that you view it, right?
Okay.
And so really what wireframe is looking at an X-ray of what makes up your design. So I can see through certain things, you know, because they're not filled in anymore. I'm just seeing the wire that makes up, or those outlines that make up our objects, and nothing else. I'm not seeing any of the filled areas. By creating a plot page, it is actually physically taking the colors out of that design and giving it a black outline if it didn't have one. So in this case, this design right now, if you look down here in the corner, there is no outline. It's none for the outline color.
Oh,
If we go to the plot page and look, now it's got a black outline, but no fill. So these are your fills and your outline colors down here in the corner.
Okay.
So if we look at
Oh,
this
cool.
page, it's got a fill color, but no outline color. If we go back to the plot page, it's got an outline color, but no fill color.
And how did you get a plot page?
Plot page is created by selecting what you want to create on the plot page, and then there's a plot page button right
Okay.
here.
How select, rather than having to put a marquee box around the whole thing, is there like a keyboard shortcut where you can select like Control A?
Control A selects everything.
Okay. And
Yeah.
then we could hit plot, correct?
Yes, but if for instance you had, you know, vases and flowers and backgrounds and, you know, anything like that going on, stuff like this, because oftentimes, you know, once I'm to the point of doing production, I've got all sorts of different stuff in here that, you know, I don't want to grab for production. And so hitting Control A and going to the plot page is going to send all of this stuff there, which I don't necessarily want. But just grabbing what I do want and then sending it is normally how I go.
Okay, that makes sense.
So the other thing, if you look at this, so I just brought in this template, right? And if I click anywhere here, it's not grabbing anything on the template. The reason for that is the template doesn't have a fill inside this area, inside the white area. Okay, so to select anything on this template, I need to click on either the text itself, because I can click on that, I can click on the picture, or there are actually two invisible rectangles. They're rectangles that have no fill and have no outline, but they're there because I use those as a reference for being able to resize it to fit the page, and also being able to see if I have enough printable area on the outside. So there, in wireframe, you'll see that there are two rectangles, but in the regular mode, you wouldn't be able to see them unless you click on, you know, where you know they're at, somewhere in here. Then if you click on it, it'll show up. It'll give you a blue dotted outline of the object that you have selected.
Yep, I've seen that.
But clicking anywhere inside here is not going to do that because it's not filled in. If I were to take this rectangle and fill it in, then that's different. So here's another thing with the pick tool, is if you have a grouped object, right now we've got a group of objects, right? And if we look in our object Docker, it's going to show up as a group with a little arrow here so you can expand it. And here are all the different things that are inside that group. And then there's also a group inside the group, which you can have grouped groups. Anyway, so if you want to, you can dig inside a group just by holding Control and clicking. And instead of square handles, it's going to give you round handles that show you that you've got something selected inside of a group. So you don't have to ungroup a group in order to get to the individual pieces. You can use Control to dig. And if you look down here along the bottom, it usually will also give you tooltips and stuff on how that works. So right here it says Control plus click selects in a group.
Wow.
Okay, so if I'm not clicking anywhere, it also tells you Shift plus click multi-selects. Double clicking tools selects all the objects. So that's another thing with the pick tool. You mentioned Control A. The same thing works with the pick tool. If you double click it, it does a Control A. It does a select all.
Okay.
Okay. Hey Matt, I see you. If you want to ask questions, you can certainly unmute yourself. You're on mute by default. But if you have a microphone, you can certainly unmute. If you don't have a microphone, you can chat.
Super quick.
Yep.
So I pull up an existing layout. I pull up this one. I want to change the name Howard. I haven't experimented into that. How do I just get Howard out of there and put in my new text?
Okay, so with the pick tool selected,
Yep.
You can come over and click on Howard.
Okay.
Okay, that's going to let you move the Howard. It's going
Okay.
to let you resize the Howard, that sort of stuff.
Okay.
But if you want to edit the text, you would click twice in a row, a double click. So if you double click, it'll automatically switch over to what's called the text tool.
Oh, okay.
So the text tool is the one that you actually use for changing text. But you can get to it quickly with the pick tool just by double clicking your text.
Okay. I didn't know that. Cool.
The thing with the text though, is if you want to select it, especially with the pick tool, is you have to select it so that the very tip of your cursor
right.
is touching the filled in portion of your text.
That's right.
Because if you click anywhere in the middle of a letter or down here or whatever, it's going to select the panel and not your text because it's seeing through that hole and selecting whatever's underneath it.
That's what I did wrong.
Yep, so if you want to select the text, you need to make sure that the very tip, the very front top left of your pick tool clicks on the filled in area of your text.
Okay.
Or you can grab it right down here at the baseline. If you move to the baseline, it'll show a little blue line.
Yep.
So you can also click on the baseline and it would do the same thing.
Okay.
And then, yeah, so again, if you double click though, it's going to automatically switch over to the text tool. And the text tool then blinks an up and down line showing you where your cursor is at.
Okay. Okay.
You can now click anywhere to change where that cursor is at.
Okay.
Or you can click and drag to swipe your text. More often than not, I use Control A because that's going to select all, and it's easier for me than accidentally, you know, I don't know, swiping somewhere that I didn't want to swipe, or maybe accidentally clicking on a handle or whatever the case may be. I use the keyboard shortcut Control A to select my text.
Okay.
Most of the time. The only thing with that, Julia, is if, let's say we've got this design and the panel is in a group, okay?
Yep.
So if the panel's grouped, we're not going to be able to click on that
Right.
text because you're actually clicking on the group.
Right.
You're not clicking on the text, okay? So if I want to click on the text by itself, that's when I'd hold Control and click, and that will then select that piece out of the group.
Okay.
Okay, it maintains it as a group, so it stays grouped together, but it lets me select it all by itself.
That makes so much sense.
The problem with that is that holding Control and double clicking is not going to get me inside with the text tool. So I would still need to grab the text tool and
Go over, highlight, hit Control A.
yeah, exactly.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Yep.
Got it. I got
But
it.
you can do the same thing if on Kathy's side, if that were a group, okay, then you can use the text tool to come over here and change that text, which is nicer because the text tool is assuming that you already want to dig inside of there. And so it's going to let you grab that text that's inside that group without having to hold Control. And again, you can see how the handles are circles instead of squares, and that's because it's inside of a group. So that's denoting that that's a grouped object.
Okay. Will you just say that one more time? When the handles are circles, it means,
It means you're inside of a group. You're selecting something that's inside of a group.
okay. And when they're squares,
Then it's just regular.
okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So, I mean, just this one tool, just the one pick tool, there are so many different ways to use it. That's why it's hard, is because depending on what you're clicking on, when you're clicking on it, you know, in what order you're clicking, that kind of stuff matters. And so that's why it's hard to learn new things, is just because there are so many variables. But at the same time, it also makes it more powerful.
Yes.
Because you can do certain
yes.
things at certain times, you know, however you want. So another thing when it comes to selecting objects with your pick tool is order, the order of your selection, okay? If you hold if you hold Shift to select multiple things, so if I had this pine cone selected, if I hold Shift and I click on the stone shape, because the stone shape was selected last, the stone shape becomes my target for whatever I'm trying to do. So if I want to center by hitting C, it's going to center my
Oh, sure.
pine cone to the shape because the shape was selected last. If I do it backwards, if I grab the stone shape first, Shift select the pine cone and then hit C, it's going to move the stone over. And that's because of the order of selection. So the very last thing that you select becomes your target when you're doing a multiple selection. The tricky thing with that is that if you're doing a marquee selection, so if you come out here and drag around a whole bunch of stuff, there is no order to the selection, right? So what it does is it defaults to what's called the stacking order, or the order of your objects over here. So what it does is it goes to the very bottom object, which happens to be the rectangle, the thing that's furthest to the back of the stack, furthest behind, and it will then center on that, which is nice because I can grab this panel, right? If all of this text here, if it were ungrouped, and if all of this text were not centered, I can grab all of this at the same time just with a marquee and hit C, and it's automatically going to center my text to my panel because the panel is the thing that's furthest behind. So it matters what order you select things in as to how things relate to each other. Okay. If I want to center my text to my panel, I select my text first, I hold Shift, I click on my panel, and I hit C, and then it will do it that way. If I did it backwards, it would move my panel.
Okay.
Can you just say that, those 3 lines one more time? You select your text.
Yeah, so if you want to do a multiple selection, you select your text or whatever you want first,
Yep.
holding Shift, you click on the next thing you want to select, you let go of Shift, so you don't have anything selected anymore, and then you would hit C or whatever the shortcut is. The shortcuts that I use are all listed here under Object, Align and Distribute. The one I'm using is Align Centers Horizontally.
Okay.
But you can, align to the left, right, top, bottom, that sort of stuff.
Cool.
Okay. Pick tool. The last thing is if you click on the pick tool and then you come over here to the Dockers and you click the little plus sign, there is what's called a hint stalker down at the very bottom. If you click on the hint stalker will actually tell you something related to that tool that you have selected. Okay. So it tells you to select an object, click it, hold down Alt to select an object that's behind. So that's another thing, is digging. We talked about selecting inside of a group, but let's say we were zoomed in like this, and we wanted to select this black object here, okay? We knew that it was sitting behind the frosted object here, and we know it's sitting behind the text here. And we also know that the shape is further back. So what you can do is you can click, and if you hold Alt, as you click, it digs to the next deepest thing in the stack behind what you currently are selecting. So I've just by clicking, I've selected the panel, I've selected the second part of the panel, or I've selected the stone shape just by holding Alt, because it's digging
wow.
through that list of things. So if I'm looking at my objects, I'll click here, which is the curve, the panel, sorry. If I hold Alt and click again, it's going to select the next thing down, which is rectangle, this rectangle. If I select again, it's going to go down to the last one there. So holding Alt will, as it says down here, Alt plus click digs, meaning it's digging further down your stack. You can also select the same objects just by going to the object docker and clicking on them as well, if you wanted to get to them that way. But using the pick tool, you can do it just right on your thing there. So that's something that the hint stalker taught us, is by holding down Alt, you're going to select what's behind it. See if I missed anything. I don't think so. I think that's a lot for one tool, right?
It is.
Yep. Number two.
Any questions on any of that?
You're
No,
gonna email us this recording, right?
Yeah, I'll just put them on the YouTube channel.
Yep.
How will I know how to find it?
Subscribe to the YouTube channel. They'll show up just as the latest thing. And then I'll also put them under, there's a playlist called training videos. Actually, I might start a new playlist just called web training or webinars or something like that. I'll put them in a new one.
I would use the word beginner, because I think a lot of people would look up, it would be one of the things I would look up, is
Yeah.
beginner.
Yeah, so maybe I'll do that. I'll just do a Memorial Designer for Beginners
Yep.
playlist.
Perfect.
Is it
Perfect.
a separate channel or on the channel you already have?
So if you go to YouTube, I'll show you here. If we go to YouTube, okay, there's going to be on my channel, along the menu bar here, there's home, which I'm gonna start adding the playlists here, but I don't currently have them there. There's videos, which is every video, and then there's playlists. So what I'll do is I'll add a playlist here that's called Memorial Designer for Beginners, and then you can go to those.
Yep.
Okay.
Cameron, I have a question. The little box underneath the pick tool, sometimes mine has switched to that little arrow thing with the loop.
Yep.
Oh, that's the shape tool. Okay. I didn't know if that was part of the pick tool or not. Okay.
So yeah, so the shape tool is, and that's probably another thing with the pick tool too, is I think, no, I don't have it set up.
That's okay. I just noticed when I was working in there, a couple times it would flip to that, and I didn't know if I hit that or what. So I just didn't know if it was a pick tool.
Yeah, this one is the shape tool, if that's the one that's selecting it.
Okay.
And the shape tool is used for actually editing your shapes as opposed to
Okay.
stuff around.
All right. We'll do that a different time. I just didn't.
One other thing with the pick tool is, if you ever run into this, there is an option right here called treat all objects as filled. If you have that selected, what that does is it makes it so that you can select things that aren't filled just by clicking inside of them as if they were filled. I don't like that, because I accidentally click on things a lot more often when I have that selected.
Oh.
So I always uncheck that. But if you ever run into it that's happening, that's why. It's because you're treating objects as filled.
Okay.
How do I know that that is on or off?
So right now it's off. You don't see anything around it. If I click it, you'll notice that the button is depressed. That's kind of white with an outline.
Okay.
So being depressed means it's on. Not being depressed means it's off.
Okay.
Okay.
And in my workspace, by default, I make it not on. So yeah, in order to select an object that has to be filled by clicking inside of it. Okay, so that is the pick tool. I wanted to see if I still had might have to stop sharing to get to it. Let's see. My poll. I want to go back to my poll. Okay, so we did pick tool. Text tool was the next one that had the highest amount. So we're going to talk about the text tool next. That's not what I meant to do. Okay, so I'm going to start sharing my screen again. Does that, before we do that, did that answer everybody's questions on pick tool stuff?
That,
Yeah,
yeah.
Okay.
Mine was so simple that like if I had a flat marker, I was going into the shape, you know, the little headstone one.
Okay.
I didn't know I could just take my pick tool and drag it and create a flat marker and then fill it and it'd be the same thing. So I had skipped that step somewhere.
Yep.
I'm good.
Awesome. Good. Good to hear. Okay, so text tool is what we're going to cover next. So I will reshare my screen. Share. All right. Text tool. Now again, the text tool has a flyout, which then underneath that is the table tool. Not something we often use for monuments. So I would, in this beginner's video, I would just forget that that even exists and not worry about it. Oh, I forgot something else. See, there's even more with the pick tool. The pick tool also lets you toggle between the pick tool and something else. So if I have the text tool selected and I hit spacebar is going to toggle back to the pick tool. If I hit spacebar again, it's going to toggle back to the text tool. So the pick tool is used so often with moving things around, dragging things, la-di-da-di-da, that there's a keyboard shortcut to get back to it really fast. Okay,
You just hit spacebar?
Just the spacebar, yeah.
Oh, for Pete's sake.
But it's a toggle, so it'll spacebar will go back to the pick tool, but then it will go back to whatever you had selected before, as far as
Sure.
go.
Sure.
The down or the one thing to pay attention to that is if you are in text and you have already clicked somewhere, then spacebar is not going to do anything but create a spacebar. I mean, you know, because you're typing text. So
Yep.
you can't get back to the pick tool easily if you're typing text. So you would have to go back and actually click the pick tool to select it that way. But that is something else with the pick tool to know, is that you can get back to it with the spacebar. Okay. So the text tool, there are two different types of text in Coreldraw. There's artistic text and there's paragraph text. You can, just clicking starts artistic text, okay? And so if I type in a name, then it's going to start typing that text. If I hit enter, it'll go to the next line. If I hit enter again, it'll go to the next line. Okay, so that is what's considered artistic text. If I did the same thing, but instead of clicking, I clicked and dragged, what that does is it creates a box or a paragraph box where I can do the same thing. I can type, I can hit enter, I can go like this, but it also acts as if I were writing a book. If I said, hello, this is Cameron, and this is my new tutorial on how to use this tool. This works, you know, like as if you were typing in Word or some other program where it's going to wrap that text to that box, and it's going to make sure that that text fits to that box. So if I make that box smaller, you'll notice how that text goes with the box, right?
Yep.
That does not happen with artistic text. With artistic text, if I make that smaller, it's going to shrink it. That's not what I want, you know, to have happen. So they work differently. Artistic text and paragraph text work differently, and for the most part, they serve different purposes. And paragraph text is not something that you often use in monuments, but you do use it on occasion. So the thing to know about paragraph text is that this is what it does, is it fits inside of a shape, right? Which can work out nicely if you had a shape like, and I'm just going to draw one. If I had a shape like a really bad teardrop. That's Hershey's Kiss. I don't know.
Hershey's Kiss.
If I wanted my text to flow inside that Hershey's Kiss, I can type in a bunch of text. This is a whole bunch of text. You know, a lot of times you're going to do this with poems and that sort of stuff. So I type this in as paragraph or as artistic. And if I wanted this to flow inside this, I'd have to kind of come like this. And then I'd have to, you know, come to this line and hit enter and then kind of guess the next one and, you know, and kind of guess and make it flow that way. I can change my justification of my text if I want to, but it's going to take me a couple clicks to make sure that that text is flowing the way that I want it to by using artistic. But instead what I could do is I could take that text and I'm just going to copy it a bunch of times so that we've got multiple lines. We can convert this instead to our paragraph text, convert to paragraph.
Oh.
And that way it's going to flow differently, right? But right now it's still going to flow as a rectangle, which isn't going to do me a whole lot of good. So what you can do is you can make this itself a paragraph text box. With using the text tool, if I come in here and I click, if I just click right now, it's going to be artistic. If I move my cursor really close to the edge, it's going to turn that edge into a paragraph text box. Okay, and so now this whole stone shape is a paragraph text box, which means that if I take this and I cut it and I paste it, it's going to go inside that shape and it's going to flow to that shape.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
And so that's one reason that I use it, is to kind of fit to shapes or flow. And you can do, you know, justifications like full or force or whatever if you wanted to do that kind of stuff as well, so that it fits that shape a little better. But that's one use of paragraph text. The other use of paragraph text is that you can do columns. So if I had a whole bunch of names, Bob Jr., and just go like this. We'll go 2 inches on that. Okay, and so most often this is going to be used with things like war memorials.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, so I've got a whole bunch of things like this. You can go up to text and say columns, and then tell it how many columns you want.
Oh my gosh.
You know, how wide you want those columns. And then it's going to start building your text in columns, so that if you have a whole bunch of names, it's going to build it in columns. So you can build war memorials easily that way by doing paragraph text.
Wow. That's
Those are really the only 2 times I use paragraph text, unless I'm doing something like a brochure. You know, Brandy, you had mentioned how you're using other programs for building your marketing stuff and whatever else. I do all that stuff right inside Coreldraw. And so for brochures, I'll do paragraph text for, you know, fitting to certain sections of my brochures and stuff.
Okay.
As far as monuments go, more often than not, I'm going to use artistic text, and that's done by just clicking. Okay.
So can I say something about the text?
You
Because
may.
what I had an issue with was, so I typed it in artistic text, the name, the date, and then I wanted to separate them.
Okay.
Like, say I wanted to just move the date away from the name a little bit further,
Okay.
but I couldn't because I typed them all together. So
Yep.
so then I had to go in and type them separately, go back to the text code, type another line so that they wouldn't be grouped.
Yep. So I most often will type my text together because it's faster. to just type it, hit enter, go to the next line, hit enter, go to the next line. Okay. In order to break those up into individual lines, the keyboard shortcut is Control K, or you just come up to Object and say break text apart. And what that does by doing that is it splits it up into individual lines.
Oh,
So you've got individual lines now.
Can you still edit that text?
It's still editable. Yep.
Okay.
If you hit Control K again, then it breaks it up into words. So now I've got this word and this word. If I did it here, it's going to break it up into December 26th and 1979. So everywhere there's a space, it breaks it. Okay. And then if you do it again, it's going to break it up into individual letters or characters. It's still all editable as text though. Okay. So this is all editable text, but it's breaking it up into smaller chunks. Normally I don't go that far, but I'll just start with my group of 3 lines, and I'll hit Control K and it breaks it apart so that I've got individual lines. I'll do that most often because if I had a panel like this, okay, and there's nothing in it, I'll grab my text tool. And okay, so here's another thing. With the text tool selected, if you want to set a default font for your document,
I was going to ask that.
without clicking anywhere, you come up here and change the font. Okay, so if I want MD Roman as my default, I'll change the font. It's going to pop up, unless you tell it not to, it's going to pop up a thing to ask you to change your defaults. I want to change it for artistic text because that's what I'm using. And then I click OK, and that's going to change my default. Same thing for the size, same thing for the justification. I normally do this when I set the program up for the first time, is I'm going to set this as my default text. But the thing is defaults are based on documents. Every document can have its own defaults. And so that's now the default for this particular document, but it's not the default for everything. Okay. Unless I come up to tools and say save setting as default, then I can tell it to then become the default for every new document. But again, it's not going to be the default for past documents that have already been created. So in this case, the reason that, normally when I'm in a brand new document, this is my default. But the reason that it wasn't anymore is because I opened up a template file that I didn't set that default for.
Okay.
And that's why it defaulted to Arial at, 0.33 or whatever the size is and horizontal, because that's what Coreldraw's default is before you ever change things.
Can you do a default for center, for justification of left instead of center? Is there a way to do that?
Yeah, so this horizontal alignment is, yep. If you choose left, then that becomes your default. Okay. Okay, I choose center because I almost always center my text. 99% of the time I'm centering text on it, on another line of text. Right. And so that's why I have, okay. I have center as being default, but you can always change it. Yes. Okay. So if I am right here and I click, if I click over here to the left, that's where it's going to start typing. If I click more in the center, that's where it's going to start typing. Because my justification is centered, I would want to, if I want to put it somewhere close to the middle, I'm going to want to click somewhere close to the middle, and then I can start typing. And then I'll just go to the next line, 26/1979. And that then gives me all 3 lines of text, okay? But then as soon as I hit Control K, it breaks those up into individual lines and automatically selects the top line of text. So just by using a keyboard shortcut, Control and 8 on a numeric keypad, I can make that bigger just by hitting 8, which is the up arrow on your numeric keypad, or 2 on the numeric keypad is the down arrow. By holding Control and clicking those buttons, I can make this bigger or smaller really easily. And so that's why I always have 1-inch MD Roman as my default, is because I can very easily break it apart and make my name bigger just by holding Control and hitting 8.
Is there a way to add sizes to the fonts? Like there's already a preset list, right?
Yeah, so unfortunately, this here, you can't add your own sizes.
That's okay.
However, it is something that I think is a good idea.
Okay.
And so when we do that, we're going to do it in our own Docker, in our own monument text Docker, and then it will be there as monument friendly sizes. So you can see over here in the monument text Docker, they're a little bit more monument friendly. I don't know why elephant's in there. But you can see anyway that, you know, those are a little bit more monument friendly.
I haven't explored those yet, so.
The reason that this is not monument friendly is because it's a conversion from point sizes. They're using point sizes as their default, as opposed to inch sizes, but we're using inches. So that's why they're not as friendly. You can always type it in though. So if I were to type in 2 inches and hit enter,
Yeah.
it's going to be, you know, it's going to use what I type.
Yep.
If I type in like 6 inches and hit enter,
Yep.
it's not going to automatically populate in the list, unfortunately. That'd be cool if it did, but it doesn't. Okay, so the text tool, going back to the text tool.
Yep.
If I wanted to change the size of the text, or if I wanted to edit the text at all, I have to click and I have to drag around what I want to change. Okay, so if I want to change just this, or if I want to change just the C, I can do that, and I can change that to a 2-inch letter. I can do that with the text tool. If I was back in the pick tool and I had it selected, if I change the text to 2 inches, it's going to do the whole line at the same time. And so if I'm wanting to change the whole line at the same time, I'll often do the pick tool instead of the text tool because it does the whole line. Otherwise, you have to click, you know, hold Control A, and then come over and select 2, and then it will do it. So depending on what I'm wanting to do, I will either use the pick tool or the text tool to determine that. The text tool is going to give you more power and more functionality, more customizability, as opposed to what the pick tool is going to let you do. But it's also, again, if I was right here and I said, okay, I want this text to be 4 inches, it's not going to change it at all because it's only changing what comes after that cursor that I type fresh. So now if I type a T, it's going to make that 4 inches, but it's not going to make anything else 4 inches because I had nothing else selected. It's only going to change from that point on with new clicks, new letters. Does that make sense?
You just got to practice it.
I would benefit from hearing it one more time.
Okay. So with the text tool, and Brandy, you said, show me again how to create paragraph text. The way you create paragraph.
Oh, I got it when you went back and did the Hershey's thing. So I got that now.
Yeah, so there's different ways. Just clicking and dragging makes a box, or you can make it out of the shape of whatever.
Okay.
Okay, so with the text tool, if you click inside this text anywhere, that's where your cursor's at. Okay, so any changes you make to font, any changes you make to size, any changes you make to whatever, well, other than probably justification, because that's going to change it for your, that should change it for your whole line. But font and size is only going to apply to new stuff that you start typing. So if I change it to Arial, you know, it's not going to change this to Arial because I didn't have anything selected. I have to actually click and swipe in order for this to change to Arial. And I don't even know why it's not changing to Arial. It's supposed to. But that's how the text tool works, is that you have to choose and swipe and click things in order for it to actually change. I think I'm stuck somewhere.
Cool.
Sure. Weird. It's back to normal now. Okay. The other thing with the text tool is that certain fonts, especially if you have the MLC font. So if I do an MLC font, these fonts have what are called open type features. And depending on the font, you know, will determine what the features are. But let's just say I did a name like I don't know, McCleary or something. Okay. This C, if I select just the C, it gives me a little caret underneath it. And what that is it's giving me an open type feature. So if I click on that, it's going to give me options that the guy that created the font, Monument Lettering Center, created these different stylistic options for that particular glyph. And so I can select those stylistic options by clicking and dragging around my text and then grabbing that caret, to see what's available. And so this C, for instance, also has an alternate where I can click on it and choose a different letter if I wanted to.
Wow.
And so different fonts are built differently, but that's one of the things that I really like about the Monument Lettering Center fonts is that he's added in stuff like this, where you can have stylistic alternates, or oftentimes what it was is the stamps that were created, there were multiple versions of the stamp. So there was one stamp for one and one stamp for the other C, and you got to choose, which stamp to use, where this, you're choosing it by selecting it, grabbing the caret and clicking on it.
That's cool. That's really cool.
So that's all done with the text tool as well. If for some reason you have an open type font and it's not giving you this option, the reason for that is up here on the toolbar. There's an option to disable showing that. So if you uncheck that, again, if it's not depressed, then it's not going to give you any of those open type feature options. So if you accidentally uncheck that.
Interactive, what does the button say? Interactive
Open type.
Interactive open type.
Yep.
Okay.
My fonts, the MD fonts, do not have any open type features to them.
Okay.
There are quite a few. So if I just do, there are quite a few fonts that come with Windows that do have open type features. And let me see if so I'm filtering to only show monument fonts. I'm going to uncheck that. And I think I've got one in here. Bandscript, this one here. This is an open type font, which one of the open type features for it is actually what's called a variable font, where you can change the width of your font or the weight of your font.
Oh,
which is crazy, crazy
cool
stuff.
That's awesome, because if you've got a font that you love, but you worry about, because we do double process, so that way, like the center of your A's and O's blow out. But if you decrease the weight of it, then it gives you more room between. That's so cool.
But Brandy, the only thing with that is that these are special fonts that were built specifically to allow you to do that. It doesn't let you do it with everything. This font was built to let you do that. So that way you can, and there are all sorts of different variables that variable type fonts let you do, but that's just what this particular font lets you do. And so, that's new font technology, not super new. I mean, it's been around for a while, but it was just added into Coreldraw in the last couple versions to be able to do that.
so that's under the AA button there?
Yeah, right next to the drop down.
Okay.
Fonts. And so it's really cool technology, but as far as monument fonts go, none exist yet that use it, but it's certainly on our list of things that we want to do.
Okay.
I think a variable modified Roman would be wicked cool, because then you can match all sorts of stuff. But anyway, so that's open type features. I just grabbed a different one, Avenir. I have no idea what this does, but it's still going to give me the option. And you can see it's got an alternate of a teeny tiny A. I don't know.
Oh, wow.
Different stuff like that.
That's cool.
It is cool.
Text tool. What else do you want to know about the text tool? Did I cover? I don't know what I didn't cover.
Yeah. A question for another time for me is, how do I, so you help me with the Coreldraw fonts. If I go on to myfont.com and I buy a font,
yep.
How do I load it in? Do you have a video on it? Because I'll watch a video. But
I don't have one specifically, but it's super easy. there are two ways of getting a font into Coreldraw. Okay, so if I
Okay.
go to, and I'll just grab a free one of whatever, I don't know. I'll just go here and grab one. Okay, so this Sweet Talk font, or La Conita, let's grab that one. Okay, so I'm going to download this font, and usually fonts are going to come in as a zip, because it's also going to have in there your license and what you can do with it and that sort of stuff. So you read through your license to see what you're licensed for. Anyway, that's why it comes as a zip, is because it's normally going to be more files than just the font file itself.
Okay.
But I clicked the extract all button, which is going to extract that zip into a folder instead of a zipped folder. And now
Okay.
I've got the individual files.
Yep.
If it were me and I wanted to keep my organization of my fonts clean, what I do is I have a monitored folder that I just drop my files, my fonts into, because it's super easy to install that way. I just have a folder that I keep my fonts in. So over here, you'll see I've got this fonts folder. I've got my favorites. I've got different versions of different companies and that sort of stuff. So if I went to my favorites font folder, all I do is I'll take that font and I'll drop it into my favorites. And now all of a sudden it's installed and it's ready to go. I don't even have to open up or reopen Corel or anything. It's already there. So if I go to the text tool and I type in La Conita, whatever the
How did you link Cameron's favorites to this?
Okay,
How does that link?
So that's the next part, is that in order to link that folder, I use Corel's font manager. So there is a separate program called Corel Font Manager. You'll find it under the list here. And when you open up Font Manager, what that does is it lets you build either libraries or just point to folders. And I find it easier to point to a folder. So I have it pointing to art-fonts here.
Okay.
Okay. To add a folder, you just click on the Add Folder button.
Okay.
And then you go, and wherever you put your fonts, you click on that folder, and then it's going to start monitoring that folder. So anytime you add something to that folder, it's automatically going to pop in.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
So that's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is to actually install the font in Windows. So if you want to install the font in Windows, back from here, I'm going to undo so that I bring it back out of that folder. You would just right click on the font file itself and say install, or install for all users if you want it to be for everybody on your machine. And what happens then when you click on that is it ends up installing the font into Windows font folder. And so if I go to my computer and the C drive and Windows and fonts, it's going to put it in this Windows fonts folder. And if I do a search for it, La Conita or whatever it was called.
Wow.
What was that font called? What is it called? Maybe that's
and then all of those are connected to your Corel.
La Conita. Yeah, so by default, Corel's going to let you use anything that's inside that fonts folder.
Wow.
Okay? So if I do La Conita, that's why I didn't find it before. La Conita. You'll see that it's installed here now inside the fonts folder. By installing a font that way, you can use it in every program that's on your computer. Not every program, but ones that use these fonts. So Word or Outlook, whatever. It's going to be able to use it inside all those programs. By installing using the font manager, it's only going to be available in Coreldraw or Corel Photo Paint or whatever.
All right. And so you got that one off of defonts.com.
Yeah, I just went to Defonts.
And they're free?
Yeah, so that's, I mean, you have to pay attention to the licensing. You have to, so right here it says this is free for personal use only. Please purchase a commercial license. So if you're going to use this on a headstone, you shouldn't use this without a license.
Okay.
Right.
Totally get it.
If they really like that, pay the $35 or whatever it is for the license and add to your collection.
I get it. I get it.
And usually
Cool.
it'll have a link like this to where you can go and purchase the actual font. So $10, right?
Oh,
10
that's
bucks for
cheap.
this font.
That's cheap.
I myself have a fonts.com subscription. So I've got if I log in here, la-di-da, then I've got access to all of Monotype's fonts, and I can just search for, you know, whatever the font is. I don't know.
Okay.
And I can download theirs. Coreldraw itself actually comes with about 1,000 fonts.
Right.
You can install those as well, which is nice. If you don't have them installed, if you go to the welcome screen, let's see where they put it. They always move it around.
Did you install these on mine?
I don't think we installed Corel's fonts on yours.
You did on mine.
And I think actually in 2021, oh, I don't know where they moved it to in 2021. In 2020, there was an option for get more. I don't know where they moved it to. I'd have to look. But anyway, you do get access to all of their fonts as well.
Okay.
How did I get there? Oh, they renamed it to Store. There you go, Store. So in 2021, it's called Store. In older versions, it used to be called Get More. But you can go and, so right here, I can check on fonts and I can check on free, and it will show me free font packs. So there's 1,000+ fonts that are free. Then there's this other one, and Allegria. These are all free ones. They do have some that are for purchase as well.
Cool.
Now, obviously, these have not been optimized for sandblasting. They've
Right.
not been optimized for, you know, the way that we work with monuments. And so you just have to realize that.
Yeah.
But I also think that it shouldn't limit you from wanting to use something that's really cool and looks nice and works well with your design, because we've got so much access to such beautiful fonts now. You know, we can do some pretty amazing things.
Cool.
Okay.
Well, I learned some new things today.
Super cool stuff, huh? So that puts us at about 1 hour and 15 minutes. I could probably go on forever,
Good.
but we're going to try to keep these at about 1 hour for each session.
Okay.
Any questions on anything?
So do you think that was pretty much everything as far as the text tool?
Probably not. For the text tool, there's probably a couple more things. I'm just trying to think.
Now, would you consider having a text follow a shape be part of the text tool teaching?
The
Or
curve.
is that,
No,
yeah,
I would consider that different. But if you
Yes.
want to know how to do it, I'll show it to you really fast. If you have a shape, okay, and you have text, you come up to text and you say, fit text to path. And then you click on the path that you want to fit to. And then it's going to fit that text to the path. And then you can, you know, move it around or whatever. Along that path, you can go inside and outside the path, but it's stuck to that path because we told it to fit to it.
I was trying to do that yesterday inside of a ribbon, and the ribbon, you know, starts out low and then it curves and up and then it curves again, you know, so
Yeah.
it's,
So that's the tricky part, is because it's
So-
trying to fit to such a complicated path.
yeah, and I couldn't get the spacing of the lettering to work out.
Yeah, so the easiest thing with something like that is to draw a new path that you fit to that's inside that. And I actually have a video. If you go to YouTube and you search for fit text to path, I've got one called fit text to path. I've also got one called fit text to complicated paths. And so that's the one that you would want to watch for something like ribbons. But
Okay.
yeah, so those two are ones that you would want to watch, though, as far as fitting your text to a path.
Okay, great.
And if those don't answer your questions, then next week on Tuesday, we can certainly go over it.
Cool beans.
Julio?
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All
And
right.
thank you.
Yep, thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you on Tuesday if you're here.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Cameron.
Bye.
See you, Miss Brandy. See you, Cameron.
I-
Bye, guys.